This is the Owens Recovery Science Podcast, hosted by physical therapist Johnny Owens.
Hey, welcome back to the Owens Recovery Science Podcast. This is your host, Johnny Owens. I'm here with Kyle Kimbrell, and today we're going to have an awesome podcast because I'm speaking to two of my favorite people in the world who are doing amazing things at a facility out in Denver, Colorado that we kind of want everyone to start to learn about because the story is amazing, what they're doing to help people is amazing, how they're kind of pushing the envelope to help us learn blood flow restriction in a population that we don't really have any studies yet, not really much from any clinical trials that are ongoing. And I'll let their founder, Chanda, explain exactly what their group does and how they're exploring these different avenues. And so they're from the Chanda Foundation. Is that the full name? I think I said it right, the Chanda Foundation?
Yeah, it's
right?
the Chanda Plan Foundation, and we have the Chanda Center for Health as well.
Okay. And you're going to definitely fill us in on what all that is here in a second. So first, I've got your bio. Chanda's got one of these bios that will make us all feel guilty that we're not given 150% every day. She's amazing. So Chanda Hinton is the founder of this organization out there in Denver, Colorado. And her story is very personal. She's super motivated, outgoing, full of energy, and is doing these amazing things. And she knows it from experience, and she'll tell us about it, that she suffered a spinal cord injury, which would really take a lot of people down, and she kind of went the other way with it. She's the executive director of the Chanda Center for Health and the Chanda Plan Foundation. It provides holistic, collaborative access and disability competent healthcare programs to individuals with physical disabilities. In 2009, she led the movement to pass the Colorado House Bill 1047, which created the spinal cord injury waiver, which offered a lot of the things that we do in rehabilitation, acupuncture, massage, chiropractic care through Medicaid to start to evaluate the cost effectiveness and does this improve quality of life in persons with spinal cord injuries in the Denver metro area. And I know she's doing more work. She's going to be expanding these services legislatively in 2020 to look at other diagnoses. In addition to all this work, she presents extensively to diverse audiences about wellness and disability. She's got more honors than you can shake a stick at. So 2008 Unsung Hero Award given at Denver's 150th anniversary. 2010 Health and Wellness Award from the Commission for Peoples with Disability. 2015 Kathy Vincent Award from the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. 2015 Diversity Award from the Mayor of Denver. 2017 Denver Business Journal 40 Under 40. 2019 Linda Andre Lifetime Trailblazer Award. And they just keep going, man. You need like a giant award rack for all this. Right now. Yeah. So Chanda, she has a bachelor's degree in communication from the University of Denver, and recently earned her master's in nonprofit management from Regis University. In all her freaking spare time, she enjoys cheesy 80s chicks flicks. Nice. Like Kyle and you have something in common now. That's good.
Yeah, I knew we had some common ground, Chanda.
With people in the community and spending time with her loved ones. And we'll put links to her organizations and everything that I think everyone would want to reach out to see what they can do to help or learn more. And then we also have Sarah Schaefer on, who is the PT that works at her foundation. Sarah is how we all kind of got together because she took one of our courses and got certified in blood flow restriction. She's been a PT for 27 years. Both in nonprofit and the private space. She does therapeutic clinical experience in both neurology and orthopedics, which you would have to be in the field she's working with. Her passion for yoga to collaborate in the advancement of the Volo Adaptive Yoga Program, which you might need to explain to us exactly what that is for individuals with disabilities. She has what we like, this kind of eclectic treatment approach with all sorts of tools in her toolbox with adaptive exercises for the mind-body connection, arthropraxis, orthopedic Dutch manual therapy techniques, dry needling, AISTM, pelvic floor, postural restorative correction exercises, and BFR certified. She's also working on her doctoral at St. Scholastica in Duluth, Minnesota. So good stuff, you guys. welcome to the podcast. And so first, Chanda, I'd like to get your full story. So tell us about, your background, what happened to you, and kind of how you came to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you for having us on. Sarah and I are both very grateful to be connected to you guys and have this time with you today. So my personal story is I was injured when I was 9 years old. I was accidentally shot in the back of the neck, and it severed my spinal cord between C5 and C6. So I am a quad, and I operate with the use of a power wheelchair. And with that, I, was kind of pushed into this very intense medical model with spinal cord injury, where I was given my wheelchair and I was given medication to address all the secondary conditions that came with having my spinal cord injury. And that path was from when I was 9 to 21 really didn't work. And so when I got to a point of having very, severe, poor health on my deathbed, being fed intravenously, as well as other particular intravenously, as well as through a feeding tube, I got to the point where I really needed to look at other options. I'm sorry, guys, I'm turning this off. But I had to get to other options around how was I going to really address my spinal cord injury using other ways in which were more vital for my body. And so for me, it was really looking on acupuncture, massage, and chiropractic, and movement to my body, all the things that our bodies are supposed to do. And so upon that, doing those therapies is why I'm on this podcast today, is because it saved my life. And with that, I want to not only be talking about it, but I have spent the rest of my life making sure that other people are aware of it and getting access to it.
That's awesome. When did you start the Chanda organization?
So it's been 15 years. So we're in our 15th year anniversary. And so with that, we are celebrating that this year, which is very weird and exciting and fun to be thinking about. This is something that we've manifested for such a long period of time and have impacted people's lives and had a lot of great people behind us. And so 15 years ago, and that was more of the systemic change piece, but then we realized we had to parallel like what we change with the system to impact people over a long period of time with how do we meet people's needs here and today with philanthropic dollars. And so then that way we're always looking at the bigger system, but not forgetting about the day-to-day and how those two can merge together over time. So we've always had those two tracks always at the forefront of priority for us.
So did you feel the need to start this was more from the lack of, insurance coverage, that you could just get this, or insurance benefits run out and this isn't like you get this for a 6-month prescription and then you're done and just move on with life? Or what was kind of the biggest motivator, you think?
Well, all of the above. One is that when you go to rehab, you only have a short period of time in which your insurance company will cover rehab. And so then you go home and you have to really look at, well, what's my insurance company going to cover in terms of how do I live with my life with a spinal cord injury for the rest of my life, having these secondary conditions, but being proactive and preventative with them, knowing that before I used to run and now I can't run. So how do I sustain that wellness and vitality of health without having, one, my body to move it, my insurance company not covering my rehab long enough, then getting out of rehab and only covering it for a certain amount of time, but then being very limited about what it is that they cover, right? So physical therapy maybe, but then beyond that, it doesn't cover the acupuncture, the massage, the chiropractic. At the time in 91 or through 91 up to 2003, obviously that was not a coverage. I know it's covered by some insurances now, but not prevalent for the general population. And then when you think about folks with physical disabilities, when I turned 18, I then went on to Medicaid. And when you think about Medicaid dollars, those are going to be even more limited than what other insurance companies might be covering. And so there was that challenge as well. So with me, it was really looking at, okay, how can I, so there was the insurance component, but then there was also me doing a lot of research to see, okay, well, is this just my story? Am I the only one that's really going through this? But upon me doing some research, I could see that my story wasn't just my story. It was a lot of people's story with spinal cord injuries and other disabilities where they were just stuck in this vicious cycle of sitting in their wheelchair and taking all of these medications to address the issue, getting worse, not getting better. And so when we talk about a vicious cycle, we've got insurance that it causes a barrier. And then let alone once you can kind of get the insurance or philanthropic dollars to fund and support that, now we're in a space where we've got to educate providers how to work with people with disabilities, because there's a lot of misunderstanding around, how to transfer us, how to adjust a urine bag if you're on a treatment table. And so all of those things are significant barriers that we had to really look at, create a plan of solution, and break down those barriers to truly get what we call collaborative and preventative healthcare, where we're not looking at it as a model of integrative health, like alternative and Western medicine. Like, I want those two terms to go away, and I really want them to come together and be called integrative healthcare. And so we're really practicing that and demoing that to know that this is what everybody should be doing.
And the services there from a provider standpoint, I mean, you have everything from primary care physicians to therapists to massage therapists. Is that right?
Yeah, what we wanted to do is when we're collaborative and not competitive healthcare, we have acupuncture, massage, chiropractic, physical therapy, adaptive yoga, care coordination, behavioral health, primary care, and dental services. And so all of that underneath one roof, where there's a linear model of care, all the providers support each other, they all work together for the sake of the end user, so that the end user feels comfortable that what's being recommended by my massage therapist actually is supported with my primary care, and that there's not this tug of war of, well, which one do I listen to, or a power struggle between two different providers saying, well, I'm the one that takes care of you, or I heal you, not yourself, but one of us, you know what I mean? And so we really wanted to break down those barriers in that capacity as well, and make sure that the culture that we were building at the center really represented that. And we have done that extremely successful, which I am very proud of all of our providers for doing that.
And you primarily supported through philanthropic or also through government grants? How do you guys keep the lights on and pay for everything?
Yeah, so it's a combination. So we have grants that we receive, we have individual donors, we do special events, and then we are a Medicaid provider. So while we created the spinal cord injury waiver, we're also a provider of that waiver. And so when folks with spinal cord injuries come into our center to get acupuncture, massage, and chiropractic, we can invoice Medicaid and get that reimbursement back from them. And so we have a little bit of reimbursement on that side as well. But the Chanda Plan Foundation really raises the money, and then the center delivers the services. And so the foundation will kind of substitute and meet the losses of what the center can't cover through those grants and individual donors. There's a small fee for service that we offer to our participants based on their income. And so they only pay $5, $10, or $15 for a treatment, which is extremely low for us, again, not being the ones that create a barrier to accessing the services, because as we break down the barriers, we don't want to become the barriers. And so really keeping a check-in on our mission and not ever looking at we're making money, but rather we're meeting a mission. But how do we either break even, be sustainable, but not always looking at the dollar as that the dollar in terms of revenue is not the driver. It's impacting people's lives.
Right. Well, you kept it going for 15 years, which is amazing. So seem to be doing something right for sure. How would a patient get to see you? Is there, specific hoops they kind of have to get through to get into the whole organization? Or basically if someone in the Denver area is like, man, I know a patient that would be great for this, can they just refer them over?
Yeah, they can refer them over, and we kind of have enrollment process. And so we have on-site services, and then we also have off-site services. And so on-site is when they can get referred by a case manager under Medicaid, or maybe they're referred over by Craig Hospital or someone else in the community. And so we have like an enrollment process. So we really look at them. We offer them what we have internally. We look at their income. We then give them an opportunity to look at, well, here's a treatment plan that with a sliding scale that would be really beneficial for you. And then from there, our care coordinators will also just look at their lives outside of the center to make sure that, their home, their they have shelter, they have food at the table, they have modifications in their home. And so looking at who they are outside is really critical to us as well. And so there's that process, and then they can either get that sliding scale, or if they're referred over and through our care coordinators going through the process of enrollment, they might find out, oh, actually you're eligible for the spinal cord injury, but you're on a different waiver. So all we have to do is transfer you by calling up your case manager from this waiver to this waiver, which covers the same thing, only this waiver has acupuncture, massage, and chiropractic for you. So then that allows us to give them a sliding scale for a short period of time to meet their needs now, knowing that by next month, well, most likely they'll be approved, they'll be on the right waiver, and then we'll get reimbursed. And so, but that only applies to people with spinal cord injuries in the Denver metro area. But then we have an offsite service, so that's just on-site. And then our offsite services is where we do have an allocation of support that we give to individuals all over the nation. And so we have folks that are down in Texas and Chicago, out in California, where they can submit to us a request to do adaptive exercise at a different location within their community. We actually started with that program, and we didn't want to push that away because we realized locally there's some folks that may have transportation barriers that we might want to meet needs and have services come to their house. But then we realized that people with disabilities and spinal cord injuries don't just live in the state of Colorado. So how can we also meet some needs of folks that are in other states that need what we have, but we just can't do it at the same magnitude in which we are at the Chanda Center?
Do you see expanding this out into other regions, kind of a brick and mortar potential?
Yeah, I think that our board of directors have been looking very strategically at what that looks like. I think that sustainability of our center now is probably the most critical because we've just moved into the center or created it in 2017, and it's just growing significantly. So I think that they're really ensuring that that is very stable, and then looking at models of if we do replicate, whether that be locally or into other states, what does that model look like? Because you can replicate solely on your own, or you can replicate in collaboration with other organizations that already have the brick and mortar component of it, and rather we're just kind of bringing in the services. And so being very creative about not utilizing more dollars or efforts or energy that maybe don't need to be done when we can be looking at a really creative model around it. So it's definitely something that continues to be talked about. We just want to be really sure that when we do that, we're doing it in the most effective way.
Awesome. Yeah, it's very interesting, kind of similar. I'm kind of with this DOD background and all the injuries from war and amputations and things like that. And we saw some of the major failings of Vietnam was just kind of like, once you end point of care, it was over, just move on to the VA, whatever, maybe if you need some meds or something like that. We definitely didn't do it as well as everyone wanted, that we kind of kept, this collaboration, this cohort of individuals that feel like I have this something somewhere that's looking out for me. I can go back and get continued care. And I remember one of our amputees said, he never felt so alone than when he was discharged from us and he was at home just sitting there looking at, not having a limb and like, okay, what's the rest of my life look like? And he's like, man, I just wanted somewhere where I could say, is there an ongoing plan to help me? When I'm 20 now, but what happens when I'm 50? And, I'm just going to go in and get new prosthetics. I could say like, for spinal cord, like, so what, I just get a new wheelchair every now and then. And, I'm going to change over time. And there's all these, kind of holistic approach, I think, which is beautiful.
Yeah. And continuum of care is critical. It's like, I had a close friend of mine that said that we don't face our disabilities when we're in rehab. We face it when we go back into the world. Like we're really in our homes, in community, and seeing the barriers and the frustrations or the lack of continued care of what do I do when I'm being surrounded by rehab, which is a really protected, safe kind of place. And then when you go home, it's like, whoa, you fall out of your chair and you're like, this is reality, right? And so it's like there's those pieces of it that are mentally and emotionally taxing, but then you got to think about the actual support to the body and the healthcare, and then that's a whole other thing. And so I often feel like our disabilities and maintaining wellness and can sometimes feel like a full job for people. And so that's our organization and being a continuum of care where once people come, they don't leave. This is where they, for the rest of their lives, we hope will sustain wellness. And when acute episodes come up, we will, increase the treatment plan. We'll make sure that we get through the acute episode. They have resources. They have the ability to connect with other people. So to really make sure that we're not allowing a level of isolation, but also just making sure that their healthcare is constantly being supported for their entire lives.
And you were injured at a really young age. I imagine you're seeing pediatric cases as well at the Chanda.
Yeah, we see fewer of them just because we notice that when people turn 18, obviously the resources change dramatically. And so that's when we have lots of families that are in scrambling spaces where they're like, wow, my child got all of this, and now that they're 18, they've been kicked off of all of these programs and I don't know where to go. And so most of them will really use Children's Hospital. And so we try to work our best with Children's Hospital to say, once people hit that transition period, don't wait, because I'm always in the mindset of how are we being proactive and preventative, right? And so this is another place of healthcare. Let's stop being reactive. Let's be proactive, so that when you guys get into that space, these families aren't freaking out, but rather there was a conversation, there was a resource, there was a process to how they would transition during that time, and that they felt supported. And I know that my family and I went through that scary time. And so when I see those people, those families, I just feel badly, because I'm also like, oh my goodness, here we are in 2020, and they're still experiencing what I experienced when I was 18 with my family. And so for me, it just kind of still blows me away in some capacity. And then I have to realize there are moments when I need to step back and be like, there are only so many projects in which I can really address and break down and increase, the best streamlining opportunity for folks, because I feel there are so many of them that my heart just wants to fix all of them. And so I got to do my best to just try to keep prioritizing some of that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, and Kyle and Ben from our group at Combined Sections this year were able to get out and visit your facility. I unfortunately was flying during that day, so I didn't get to make it. I'll be out next time. But Kyle, can you kind of take me through what it was like when you went out to their facility?
Yeah, it was fascinating to see what they've put together there. And it was kind of humbling too, honestly, because you're like, golly, you can see all the hard work that has gone into this for years now, and hearing Chanda's story about how she was injured, what healthcare looked like over the course of those years, kind of leading up to that point where she described this point to Ben and I of, she was basically on her deathbed, and then they get her, stabilized back to, some semblance of health. And Chanda asked the people, okay, what do I do now? And they were like, well, here are the drugs that you were taking before. And it was like back to kind of just where you were. And Chanda, as you've already heard, is like, well, hell no, that's not happening. Like I'm fixing that. So, and so here we are now, getting to go to this really cool facility. That a lot of thought has gone into the design of it. I thought, kind of, you already sort of drew the parallel to CFI, Johnny. There was so much thought into just like the design and the look and the needs of the patients that would come through there. Just looking at every single room. Every room has this cool lift that's above it. It looks more like a person's bedroom than it does a treatment room. And I thought that the one of the coolest things was just hearing how all the medical professionals there collaborate with one another, how Chanda has forced them all to use the same office.
All play nice.
I was like,
in the
that
sandbox.
is so awesome, and it's you see her leadership kind of throughout that whole thing, which was really, really cool. And it was fun to meet all the different providers and kind of hear what it's like for someone coming there for the first time or coming there for a daily visit, and all the different things that they do To me, I made the comment to them, and I'll make it here. You looked at it and you went, God, this is really truly healthcare. This isn't modern medical management, which is what most of us get through the health insurance that we have. But what they have really there is truly healthcare, because the patient is really kind of put first as much as it can be the whole way. And that's very obvious, I think. So I would like to hear from Sarah, because I think we could talk to Chanda the whole time very easily. And I believe Sarah is very, very accustomed to that. But I'm curious, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind just kind of jumping in and telling us a little bit about your career trajectory, how you ended up getting linked up with Chanda, and then maybe walk us through what it's like to work in this multidisciplinary environment where you get to take care of these people that have needs far and above the typical musculoskeletal outpatient physical therapist that's going to be listening to our podcast, and just kind of let us hear what that's like.
Sure, I'd be delighted. Gosh, it's so fun to hear this conversation, and I'm so delighted to be here. As you can tell, Chanda is a door opener, not a gatekeeper. As I like to describe her, the energy, her knowledge, her dynamic personality, the spirit, she's an open book. And so I think that transparency kind of transcends what happens at the facility, and in a very collaborative way. And, my background is in spinal cord injury for the first 5 years of my career, and then moved into outpatient orthopedics. I owned a private practice for 10 years, and kind of made a lifestyle decision to move to Denver and be a part of nature and be a part of connecting with nature. And Chanda actually came to my adaptive yoga class, and that's where we met. And in my mind, I sort of cyber stalked her a bit and thought, I think it's likely that I'm going to be working at your facility.
I did that
to me.
I did that to Johnny on Twitter. Yeah,
I love it.
It works.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally
don't
works.
give people ideas out there, right? We don't need that, Chanda.
Johnny's
beauty of
DMs
the
are
whole
blowing
process.
up right now.
Yeah. I mean, it was just so organic. And that's when you listen to Chanda speak, that's what you hear. It's just a very organic, loving conversation. And so she attracts people and providers that think like her. And, to have, first time in my career, to have chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapists, all sharing their thoughts and insights on how to collaboratively and creatively care for people has been just so fun. I mean, it's 27 years in or 28 years in, whatever it is, I'm having fun. And the ability to kind of take the technology of sports medicine, having worked with high-level athletes, and bring the same technology to our participants and individuals who are full-time wheelchair users is amazing. I mean, it's incredible. And I've just been floored at the lack of access. And so that's what inspires me, is Chanda's vision of caring for others and creating a sustainable product that can continue on with or without any of us there is the whole key and the whole mission. Did I answer your question?
I thought that was great. That was wonderful. Yeah, no. So why don't you describe the facility to us, just kind of the basic setup, and then maybe talk us through what it's like for a patient when they come in there, like for an initial visit, and then maybe like your follow-up visits. And I know those are kind of vary person to person, but just maybe a general synopsis of that.
So we're kind of in an interesting situation in that the spinal cord injury waiver does not cover physical therapy services. And so as Medicaid providers, there is an opportunity there to receive physical therapy, but the reimbursement levels are quite limited. And we're in the process of kind of testing the system to see what the system actually will provide for individuals on a physical therapy Medicaid provider basis. And so right now, the physical therapy services are really funded through grants and through private donations. And so when an individual comes in, what is unique about this is most people are, between 2 and 48 years post-injury. And so they're at a different place than when someone's, say, in an inpatient rehab hospital setting. And so really the focus becomes not what can I impart to them, but what are their needs? What are they looking for? Are they looking for the development of a therapeutic home exercise program? Are they looking for something specific around a rotator cuff injury from repetitive manual chair propelling? And so we really open those questions up. Are they looking for information about, positioning and sex and disability, which is a common topic that kind of gets glazed over. Mm-hmm. And so we really, are customizing and catering the program to what they're expressing their needs are, not what I think they might need.
And is that Medicaid guidance, is that state by state, varies quite a bit, or is it pretty much everyone, it's piss poor reimbursement for physical therapy?
I think it's state by state. I was in Texas the majority of my career, which I know the reimbursement was quite limited there. And so I'm new to testing the Medicaid system in Colorado. Do you have any thoughts on that, Chanda?
Yeah, it's definitely state by state. And then, but I don't think that Colorado is pretty progressive in Medicaid. So if Colorado's not doing it as significantly well, I'm not really confident in other states doing it. And so, but yes, it is state by state. I just think that each state has to really fight for it being reimbursed more, and that there's more time in which you can have access to physical therapy, just like the acupuncture, massage, and chiropractic. Like, we want that to be very similar to where it's like you get so many number of units where it's not a constant, you got to get a pre-approval, and then you got to justify again after 9 treatments, things like that. And then that the reimbursement is better. So I do see us doing additional legislation around this specifically. But we just needed to really expand the waiver first. And then next year, I'm sure we'll be adding that part to it.
Awesome.
And we've also had preliminary meetings with the state of Colorado Medicaid provider office, DORA, and, are beginning to present our case around the lack of Medicaid coverage or the limited Medicaid coverage. You and I can go and get a massage, or we can go and do a workout at the gym after work. But these individuals need the opportunity to be able to access the same things that you and I do. Our physiology is the same. Our insulin growth factor 1 is the same, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that has been fun for me, getting to talk to all these elite level sports teams and whatnot. I look at that and I go, well, why doesn't everybody have access to this? Why can't everybody come in every day if they need to, if it's warranted, if we can really defend it and receive the care? That's how I complete every course now. And I've said it on here before. That's Kyle's Fantasyland. At the end of the course, I describe to you what I envision being where we go. And that wouldn't be any different for the person with the spinal cord injury. So I wonder, Sarah, could you maybe tell us a little bit about some of the successes you have seen treatment-wise due to this collaborative effort that you guys have been able that Chanda has put together, and then maybe some of the little hiccups that you've kind of had along the way in terms of trying to figure out how do I work with a chiropractor and an acupuncturist and the physician and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we did basically a case study or a pilot study that began with 12 individuals, and we had 9 people actually complete the pilot study. And about 6 of those had injuries that were between T7 and T12 paraplegia. And we had 4 individuals that were at a level of C3, C4. And it was really interesting. Of course, we took, ratings of perceived exertion, blood pressure, pre and post treatment, as well as heart rate. And we really did not have any really unremarkable global changes in terms of people's concerns about actually receiving BFR. The biggest complaints or difficulties I think we had were itchy skin under the tourniquet, which I think everyone has experienced. And then one of the challenges we had when we were trying to take limb occlusion pressure was that spasticity, either in the upper extremity or lower extremity, would create an error message. And sometimes it would take 5 or 6 trials to actually get the limb occlusion pressure to actually start the process. But those were fairly minor, and that was just a matter of repeating the process and readjusting the cuff and all the things that we learned in the course. But gosh, I think that some of the more remarkable responses were, improved gait speed with push-off, people describing able to like even hold their pelvis in neutral when lying on their back. And if you think about the lordosis that happens when you sit in a chair all day and the tight psoas and hip flexors that occur, that's a big deal as far as pressure and skin management. Even improved sitting trunk balance, like in a shower chair, not having to use their upper extremities to support themselves while taking a shower. One person described they got stuck on a slide board transfer and that no one was there, and he was able to actually get himself out of the stuck situation. So that was a big deal. And even hand to mouth function, just being able to bring, say, a granola bar from placed on the top of your hand to your mouth and having the opportunity to feed yourself, just huge. It was very exciting. I would say the average strength and range of motion improvements were at about 54%. So about all the people made on average about 54% improvement in their actual objective measures, which was very exciting.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's cool.
Let's see, what else?
I know one of the things that, the conversations that you and Chanda and Ben and I had was some of the challenges with being able to get a spinal cord injury victim to exert themselves, to really kind of expend some energy during exercise, just given the limitations in function and that sort of thing. So maybe, Chanda, maybe you even could speak to that a little bit, just the ability that you notice to be able to just work harder.
Yeah, I think Sarah, how did you phrase it? The exertion. How do you say it? Because you say it so.
The rating of perceived exertion, or
no? How much actual low intensity with how do you say it? Like
yeah. So for example, like there are many muscles with Chanda where her highest exertion is 30% of her 1 rep max, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's been extraordinary to be able to have her exercise. Is that what you mean, Chanda?
Yeah, because for example, like my ability I can do doing 10 of these means I actually get the better. It's almost like I did 100 of them, right? So with me being only to move so much of my body, and Sarah, you say the term so well, so I'm trying to get you to say what it is.
I'm trying to remember what I say.
With it, it's with low intensity movement or insertion.
Low intensity exercise with the ability to still obtain the effects of what we get during a high intensity exercise.
Yes. So that is exactly it. That's beautiful, because it's like, for me, one of the things that I told Sarah is like, I want to have my heart rate up. I want to feel that again. I want to feel that for the sake of like burning off frustration. Like that feels good. Like we all know that after we work out, it's like, wow, like we not only did something that burnt off some frustration, but we just feel good. And so for me, it was like having that heart rate ability to go up. That was one, but then also I wanted to look at how I could lose some weight in areas of my body that like for the longest time I haven't been able to do. And so like, it's beautiful because I was able to actually do that too. And then I was able to gain more mobility. So between like, my heart rate, having that euphoria within my mental capacity, my mental mind, and burning off stuff, along with, increased mobility because of my muscle strength, and then losing some of my weight that I wanted to, like those 3 things were my top priorities, and we were able to do them. And so and within my limited mobility as a quad, right? So that was so exciting for me, because it's like, I'm a quad, but I still want to work out. I want to pump some iron and feel good. So,
and enter aerial yoga. So we've been kind of melding all of these different worlds, and aerial yoga, well, what the heck is that, right? So it's this silk that can either be attached to the ceiling or to an actual aerial frame. And basically what it does is allows someone who is sitting in a chair to actually kind of strap in. So the shoulders kind of wrap into the silk. And maybe in the future we can have some pictures of some of these things, because we've got some nice pictures.
Kyle, you have pictures of these?
I was going to say, I know when we were there, I did some video of you doing that, and we put it on our little Instagram story.
Oh,
but
good. Yeah.
we got some pictures and video that you sent too.
So doing that with BFR?
With BFR, yeah. So we have Chanda supported by a silk hanging from the ceiling, which creates decompression in her spine, which is why that feels so fabulous. And then she's able to kind of rock front to back and side to side with her body without falling out of the chair, while under BFR restriction. And then she is using 1 and 2 pound weights with cuffs in her hands, so gloves specially made to hold the weights, since she doesn't have the dexterity in her fingers for that. And then when we first started, she could tolerate 1 8-minute session, pretty fatiguing. And with maybe a 5 to 7 minute break in between, and then a second 8-minute session. And now she plows through between 4 and 5 8-minute sessions with maybe 1 minute break in between, just enough to take a quick break. Initially, her heart rate, she could get it up to maybe 85, 90, and now she's consistently up to 120 while exercising.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that's hence the effects that the physiologic effects that she's feeling when, in terms of losing weight, in terms of euphoria, and all the fun things that you described, Chanda.
Yeah, and using the silk too is another way for me to have stabilization as a quad. When I would want to use my arms to do what I needed to do, my upper trunk would like fall over. So then I'm like, wait, I can't do a workout without being. So then with the silk, it allowed the decompression, but it also allowed for me to have stability, so that way I could actually do what I needed to do. And then, I even go back to, like, I love all the physiological changes that I experienced, but one of the things that felt really, really cool to me is that I was able to be like, yeah, I just got done working out. Like, as a quad from 9 until I was 37, like, I never really got to say that. And so me being able, like, yeah, I just got done working out. Like, it felt good to say that. And when we say that, like, that's profound in terms of like how that affects like how we feel about ourselves, how we are in the world, because that's, those terms are just powerful. And so the mental and the physiological components of it's just fun. It's amazing. So
I think that cardiovascular piece is something that isn't really considered quite a bit in people with spinal cord injury. That was actually in my master's thesis. That's what we looked at, is, because you can't get a workout that gets your heart rate up. And the part of the problem too is, even when we had some really high end wheelchair racers come in, the lactate that they build up in their arms becomes so intolerable that they get lactate intolerance before they get an actual heart workout lots of times. So we're seeing their heart rate wasn't getting up, but just that burn, because if you build up a lot of lactate in your legs, it's such a large muscle mass, you can kind of clear it. But building up all this lactate in their arms, they weren't getting a true cardiovascular workout. So, we knew that spinal cord injury people had a higher incidence of heart failure because of that. Unfortunately, that's kind of what can get you. And peripheral arterial diseases from that stasis and not moving. In our work, what we were trying to do is, none of it worked, but even doing arm bikes back in my thesis work, we were trying to see if you did clockwise, could you get increase your heart rate better? Counterclockwise, if you did it, symmetrically versus asymmetric, none of it seemed to work. And so that's where, I'm really hoping we continue to get this data from you guys, because I think that's one of the main paths we want to go down is how can we do this to affect the cardiovascular system? And we're measuring VO2 max changes to be able to see, can we go after that first? Because a lot of people are like, yeah, does it help with strength and hypertrophy range or whatever? Man, if we can get this cardiovascular response, that's more of a mortality issue than just a function of life issue. And then we talk about it on our podcast a whole lot. This hypoxia seems to be the genesis to be able to help create capillary beds. You get angiogenesis from it. And that is a big deal in an immobilized population who isn't able to use a lot of their capillary beds, especially in the lower extremities. And so hoping
Johnny?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to just say, as a side comment, I appreciate you really talking about that cardiovascular piece, because what's happening with just overall improvements of how people take care of themselves. Of course, people's spinal cord injuries are aging. And so there's kind of a new development with people who have chronic autonomic dysreflexia, where they get cardiac myopathies because of the chronic high state of blood pressure. And then, of course, baroreceptors and are responding by trying to decrease. And so AD, autonomic dysreflexia, it's really a big deal.
Yeah.
And we're constantly trying to create ways to work around that, but still keep people's hearts healthy.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I want to kind of get across on the podcast, our relationship with you guys. Not only want to put out like the badass stuff you're doing, and I wish we had one of your centers in like every city. But no one is testing this really. We're trying to get work into the spinal cord injury populations with this. And, so far we just haven't had anyone really take a crack at it. And so for you guys to say, yeah, we're willing to do this on ourselves, Chanda, as well as on our patients, to start giving you guys pilot data and measure hemodynamic responses, measuring tolerance, measuring functional, that's huge. Because now we finally, when people say, well, do you have pilot data? We can say, yeah, here we go. And it's from this organization and what they've done. We have a great relationship with the University of Colorado. We already have studies going with them. Can we take that data, apply for funding, and actually get real clinical trials to see if this is something that we should be doing from rehab? Because I think that's what helps with the payment. If we we show, okay, if these people do this, we do help with cardiovascular disease, or we get this VO2 response, we get this angiogenic response. This needs to be a real reimbursable, that people need to come in, because you know what it does? It keeps them from all the expensive costs which happen as you're getting the comorbidities of dying in life when it really happens. What helps the healthcare system is a steep curve of mortality. You do pretty well in life and then you just die. You don't just slowly I got diabetes now, hypertension, peripheral arterial disease, and all the expenses that go along with that. So it definitely buys into what we're looking at. So Sarah, did you and Chanda have a plan that like, hey, I'm going to go get blood flow restriction certified and start this? Or you just pop in one day and say, Chanda, guess what? I got a tourniquet. I'm going to get a tourniquet and I'm going to put it on you and we're going to do it.
No, actually, I was at a pain neuroscience conference in Denver maybe 2.5, 3 years ago or so. And Ado Zalstra, who's a colleague and friend of mine, and he's kind of been the founder of Dry Needling. We were having just kind of a sidebar conversation around BFR. And I was like, what the heck is that? Why do I not know about this? And so we started talking about it. And then, I got online and asked a few questions of your organization. And basically 2 weeks later, I flew down to Dallas and got certified. I was like, there's no reason this can't be applied to the Chanda Center. I was super excited about it because it's kind of one of the first things I've seen in a long, long time that actually has the potential to be a huge game changer.
Yeah, that's awesome. We hear that over and over. And Ada's a good friend. We're supposed to be at a conference together this summer, so I'm hoping it still happens.
Yeah,
everything's dynamic right now.
It is.
And then, Chanda, was there any issues with like, okay, we're ready to move forward, collecting some pilot data? with
No,
this?
no, when Sarah brought it up, I got really excited. And then it was just Sarah and I having conversations with you all to be like, okay, well, is this something you guys all want to look at with us? And you were all game. And so with that, it was really easy for us with your guys' support to be able to, do the pilot, collect the data, still do it. And I was just excited. And at first it was, when I first started doing it, because it was a little bit, I had some struggle with it in the very beginning. I wasn't quite sure. Right. But then as I kept doing it, the profound results and the things that I shared with you, it just made me even more excited. And then, just Sarah, when we have visitors that come through the center, or even explaining it to participants, she drew out the diagram to really explain what physiologically was happening by using BFR, which was so beautiful to share, because when we can have a better understanding of our bodies and why it's doing what it's doing by using this, that I think that also gives a whole nother reference that is really important, because I think often we all disconnect with our bodies, the mind-body connection. And I think that, granted, I feel like folks with disabilities, I think there's a level of sometimes we're forced to be really, really in touch with our bodies, because we've got to be aware of a lot of stuff. And then there are other times where folks are so disconnected from their bodies because of paralysis. And so you either find somebody kind of on either end of the spectrum there. And so for me, when Sarah brought it up and you guys jumped in, it was just really, it was a no-brainer. And I'm just extremely glad that we've done it. I'm extremely glad that we've seen the results and just continue to do it.
Yeah. It's empowering to know your physiology still works, right? And that we can tap into it. And like you said, to do it and then feel like when you got done, wow, I actually did something. I always quote my first elderly patient that did it, elderly female. She got done and she said, I haven't felt my body do that in 30 years. And so it feels like that might be kind of the same sensation that you're getting over there, which is super cool. Super cool.
Knowing that, because when you talk about your heart and all, the cardiovascular components of the body, and when you're not having access to that because you can't move your body, it's scary, because you're just like, wow, I don't want that, and my lack of access to be the thing that takes me out, right? And so it's really, it's incredible to see that we're we're all being innovative again, and making sure that we're using whatever tool is out there to really give additional opportunity.
Well, hopefully this podcast piques some interest in some of these spinal cord injury centers around the country. Maybe someone will hear it and they can reach out to you, and then we can start to get a collaborative effort.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. And we need to get you guys, I'm going to make it happen. We're going to get some more units sent out to you guys, which sounds like from talking to y'all that will help. So that's going to happen. So we can't ignore it right now. How is COVID affecting you guys? It's affecting everybody.
Yeah, we had to close the center just because, not temporary, just meaning for social distancing, making sure that we're with our folks being, quote unquote considered vulnerable within our lung capacity, all those kinds of things. We really want to be mindful that we're not categorizing that, but that we're also just being safe with our providers, our staff, the participants that we serve. And so we felt as a healthcare organization that we needed to temporarily close for the sake of supporting, the flattening the curve, social distancing. But now what we've done is we've gotten just innovative around telehealth. And so all of our behavioral health is being done through telehealth. Our primary care is telehealth. And then our care coordinators are reaching out to all of those that maybe aren't doing primary care or counseling through telehealth, just to check in on them. Are they okay? Are their resources okay in terms of, are they getting their durable medical equipment, their gloves, all the things that they need to function daily? So they're checking in with them. And then a lot of our providers, we're going to be doing some Facebook Live classes, just like when we're stuck at home for a month doing this. Let's just talk about ways in which we can do a breathing exercise. Maybe Sarah's going to talk about when you're sitting in your wheelchair, for those that are able to, let's not only breathe, but let's do some sort of like movement in whatever capacity you can. So still trying to touch them in whatever way we can during this little temporary period of time. And I know that, everyone's just concerned, and we're trying not to feed the fear, but we're also trying to balance the fact that we're learning a lot of creativity and innovation during this time. But I also don't want the creativity and innovation to take away the fact that there are people that are really, really that are dying, and that's very sad. And so it's heavy for all of us.
Yeah. Well, but you made your patients more functional. So if anything, you've made them more resilient during this time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's hard to not be able to be there to support them too, because we know how vital our services are. And so we want to keep them healthy, but yet we don't want to get close to them, because it's like, so there's that really weird tug with that. And Sarah, I'm sure that you get that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had quite a few check-ins with folks, and it's tough, but it's also really interesting to think about, okay, well, so can we do an adaptive chair class from Facebook? Yes, so that's in the works for the entire month of April. And then just, I can go on and on about inclusive fitness. So that could be hours and hours of very boring video, I'm sure. But helpful video. So yeah.
And I think, Sarah, too, it's making, I think there's also some really cool things, especially with what I'm seeing the government do around, like, our local state is getting approval from CMS for a lot of things that, like, we've been fighting for a really long time.
Yeah.
This comes in, they're like, done, done, done. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to be able to reel back some of the things that we've been trying to fight for a long time. And then thinking of telehealth, like, we've been wanting to do telehealth with primary care ever since we partnered with Denver Health. And so now that they're on board with it, the primary care is like, well, it's going to be kind of hard to get people to come back in. And I'm like, hey, I support that, because we should have already been doing that from the very beginning. So I think that it's going to open up some areas where, as humans, we're still going to be able to connect, but we're also going to be meeting the need of our population that maybe doesn't have to drive all the way to see our doctor just for an eye-to-eye contact that happens on a video just to refill their 6 months prescriptions. It's like your subscriptions for medication. It's like that. So I'm seeing that there's going to be some things where we've been pushed that are really going to, like, hopefully stay there.
Yeah. Hopefully if they try and pull this telehealth back, the patients will have an uproar and help us with this fight. I know we've all been fighting for it for a long time. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to put links to your website. And if someone wanted to donate to your organization, you're a nonprofit. So it's a charitable donation. You can do that right through the website?
Yeah, there's a donate button on the website.
All right. And Kyle put out some cool social media pictures that you guys sent us of your patients doing BFR. Probably be good to repost those along with this podcast to let people see, when the ankle sprain patient is whining about BFR being hard for their little injury, seeing a quad do it makes it completely different. So,
I love it.
Cool. Anything else?
Thank you guys, man. I just appreciate your willingness to collaborate with us and kind of think outside the box, and we'll see where this goes as far as bringing some real data to the table.
I'm gonna be like Chanda and work my butt off to make it happen. So that's my world where I can help. So I'll keep pushing.
We do at least 2 courses in Denver every year. So now I'm just leaning on y'all to come and talk for a little bit. I'm just giving you the floor, or Johnny or Ben will give you the floor for a bit, and just to tell all these people that came for musculoskeletal reasons, like, that's the low hanging fruit. That's the easy, really, that target doesn't mean as much as, something like this, where we're really, hopefully, prolonging people's lives, as Johnny was speaking to all the cardiovascular benefits that, we would hope we can manipulate to be great. So,
yeah, I hope that anybody that's listening, that's in that realm around rehab regarding spinal cord injuries, like, if they're listening, that they reach out to you guys and say, wow, let's do something with us. Like, I think that what's really beautiful is, like, knowing that in rehab, it can be a possibility of a pilot there is really significant and important. So I'm encouraging folks that are listening to this to reach out to Johnny or Kyle just to get this going in a different area as well. Just because what we've shared is it's critical, and I'm excited about what it looks like for the future.
Yeah. We're tired of these wussy pro athletes. We need to move on to a deserving population. So cool.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
What's that?
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys soon.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Owens Recovery Science Podcast. Owens Recovery Science is a single source for PTs, OTs, ATCs, DCs, MDs, and other medical professionals seeking certification in personalized blood flow restriction rehabilitation training. Find them online at owensrecoveryscience.com.